it is totally unacceptable for us as a country to sabotage ourselves right now.
Chrystia Freeland was in Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta recently to talk about another project that the Liberals are trying to take credit for, and was asked about the rail strike shutdown. A week ago, Trudeau and the Liberals said there was no possibility that they would intervene. And now?
Let's take a look.
Michelle Bellefontaine, CBC. What is your department expecting or forecasting in terms of the economic impact of a complete rail stoppage? And what kind of contingency plans are underway?
Thank you for the question. And let me just start by saying Canada is a trading nation. We make a lot of great things that we sell to the world, and we should be proud of that. And our railways are an essential way that we get our goods to market. Canada and the Canadian economy have been through some really tough times since COVID first hit.
Yeah, because the Liberal government's in power. That's why we've been through tough times.
I was going to, whose fault is that?
I can almost guarantee had it been a Conservative government, we would have fared much, much better.
Yeah, like who was in power at that time? Oh, right. Like, come on.
We had lockdowns, then we had shortages, then we had high inflation, then we had high interest rates. We are now truly starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, with inflation back within the Bank of Canada's target range for 7 months, and interest rates having come down twice.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew she was going to be, taking credit for this. So we're entering a recession now.
That's why interest rates are going down.
That's why they're plummeting down, yeah. Yet they're going to take credit for this and say, oh, well, it's all us. It's all us.
But it wasn't their fault when it went up.
No.
When interest rates, what was prime? It was in like the 2 point something range, and then it went up to like 5. It went up a lot. It like doubled, and that wasn't their fault, right?
No. It was the global economy. It was Russia. It was Ukraine.
Right. It was just a thing that happened to Canada. But now that it's coming down, it's totally because of the Liberals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wink.
Yeah. Seriously, folks, we take it really seriously. Yeah. And the fact that they have completely dwarfed our economy. Unemployment is starting to go up at a very significant rate.
Poverty is up at an extremely significant rate.
Yeah, and going up, more and more with each day.
Homelessness.
They are now saying, "Oh, don't worry, everybody. Interest rates are coming back down to historic lows, Glenn." Give me a break.
It is entirely unacceptable for anyone to get in the way of that economic progress that we have all been making, and that has been so hard fought and so hard won. So I want to take the opportunity that your question presents to say to the parties, to say to the companies, to say to the union, we are expecting you to work really, really hard, to negotiate in good faith, to negotiate with real energy and intensity, and to get a deal done. Your customers expect that. Your customers' employees expect that. The farmers who I saw on my way here swathing, they expect that. The people who work here, they expect that. Canada and Canadians expect that. So we know the best deals are reached at the negotiating table. We are expecting the parties to roll up their sleeves and get a deal done ASAP.
It's a bit rich about her to talk about expectations, because Canada expects a government that isn't corrupt as hell. Canada expects a government that doesn't, ring up ethics violations like they're at a pinball machine. Canada expects governments to actually, make the country better, not the country worse. And I can cite all of the groups that you were talking about. They would have the exact same expectations. You don't seem to care about their expectations. All you care about is talking down to everybody like they're kindergartners and telling everybody else what to do, taking away our freedoms, and then patting yourself on the back saying you're doing such a great job. So, yeah, no. Now, the funny thing is that you see where she is. She is actually with Shell and working on this Polaris project, where they're announcing this carbon capture plant. Okay. Well, the funny thing is she's trying to take credit for it, for the Liberals, when they actually had a very, and this is going to sound rich, minor play in this, because this is a project that's $1.35 billion, and the Alberta government forked in over $700 million into this project. And then Ottawa comes in with $120 million. Yet they're the one having the press conference, and they're the ones saying, look at us guys, we're so great. Piggybacking off of the innovation and initiative that is going on in Alberta. So I find it really rich that she's there taking credit again for something that her party didn't really do. So not that $120 million isn't a lot of money, but when you stack that up against the provincial government, you should have put in a lot more if you wanted to take credit. But let's continue.
As my follow-up, though, how patient can the government afford to be with these negotiations given the economic consequences? And I'm wondering if you can tell us what kind of contingency plans the government has.
Our plan is for the parties to listen to Canadians, listen to their neighbors, listen to their friends, to recognize that it is totally unacceptable for us as a country to sabotage ourselves right now. We have been through a lot. We have made so much progress with our economy, and Canadians from coast to coast to coast are depending on the employers, are depending on the union to get a deal done and to get it done with alacrity.
So, sounds like they're not going to intervene.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like she's cajoling them almost into sitting down at the negotiating table and figuring it out for themselves.
Yeah, now boys, you better sit down. Yeah, so not going to intervene. Or are they?
Under Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code, I've directed the Canada Industrial Relations Board to assist the parties in settling the outstanding terms of their collective agreements by imposing final binding arbitration. I turned down, as you know, a request from one of the parties to do something similar last week. Because we believe in collective bargaining. We believe that with a deadline looming that we could see some progress at the negotiating table. We wanted to give it every chance of success, every chance to succeed. Unfortunately, in this case, we weren't able to, and that is why we have come to this decision today.
So, earlier today, the CN and CPKC rail companies had stated that they were going to start restarting their rail organizations as of 6 p.m. Eastern time today, I believe.
Which is Thursday.
So, Thursday, August 22nd. If you're watching this tomorrow, which of course you're watching this tomorrow because this is when we released it. So, so that's the latest. So interesting that the Liberals actually kind of took my advice and, well, actually they weren't as nice as I was going to be. I would have told them, you have until, I would have ordered them to restart, and then I would have said, you have until Friday to get a deal done. Otherwise, you're going to be going to binding arbitration. So they're just sending them right to binding arbitration. So what does that mean? What that means is, if you didn't watch our other video, is that there's going to be an arbitrator assigned to work with the two parties, look at their proposals, and then there's no negotiation. The arbitrator does their analysis and then comes back and says, here's your deal. Go away.
And they look at what's going on in the market, in similar unions, in similar industries, etc. They don't just pick numbers and policies out of thin air. They do research, and they do try to make a fair deal, if you want to call it that. Again, if both parties are unhappy, then it's probably a good deal. Now, I do want to say, at the risk of complimenting the Liberals, I think they probably handled this specific situation the best that it could have been, because they didn't jump the gun last week. They didn't say, yes, we're going straight to binding arbitration, because they wanted to show that, oh, we believe in bargaining, we believe in coming to the table, etc., etc. So they did, as you suggested, they gave them some time, and the parties were not able to work it out. So now the Liberals are like, okay, well, if we don't send it to binding arbitration, that's going to be a huge loss for our economy, and we cannot take that loss right now.
Well, and so I think the country in general believes that they made the right decision. Now, there's going to be a lot of pushback from union workers potentially on this, saying, well, you know, that you're depriving us of our right to strike. And yes, that is the case. So the government can't just now wash their hands of this and walk away. They need to look at our rail infrastructure and the companies that run them and ask some very serious questions and make some very serious changes. So if you have determined that, you know what, this situation cannot be allowed to happen, in that you can't have the two major rail companies in Canada go on strike at the same time, or lock their workers out at the same time, one or the other, because it's going to cost our economy $1 billion a day. If that can't be allowed to happen, well, then you need to be looking at making some changes in either the laws, or designated them, you know, essential services, so they can't, or something. Because if you're not going to allow them to strike, then there needs to be some expectations to do that. Or if you're not going to allow the companies to lock their workers out, you need to be able to prevent them from doing that. So, you know, and it's not as if my two options I just presented are the only options, but the government has responded to this by saying this is not something that can be allowed to happen because the impact is too great. Fine, you need to deal with something afterwards. Now, let me just be clear here. Whether you're in the union or not in the union, the company releasing information, they're not telling the full story. The union executive releasing information to the union, they're not telling the full story. Nobody is ever telling the full story. By the sounds of it, the company has been potentially bargaining in bad faith. I don't know if I can say the same thing for the union, but clearly there's some problems here that need to be resolved. So, but this is the Liberal solution to them. Now, you may say, well, this is bad because the employer gets to win. Well, you won't know who wins and who loses until you get to the end of the arbitration.
Well, and I think the major concern here is the Canadian economy. As we had discussed in our previous video, not having rail cars moving across Canada would severely impact prices at the grocery store, and that would harm people who are already impoverished. 25% of Canadians live in poverty right now in 2024.
Well,
so that would have hurt them worse.
And there's businesses across the country that would then have to lay people off because they wouldn't be able to fulfill contracts and run their businesses. So this would have a catastrophic impact across Canada and an impact on the United States as well, don't forget.
Yeah, which also kind of makes me wonder if the President of the United States rang up JT and was like, you need to do something about this because we're not going to let you do this.
Right. So if at the end of arbitration the employees are unhappy and the union's unhappy, it could be a fair deal, but
or as close to fair as you can get. I mean,
well, and if the deal is that the employer's out to lunch and the union has a fair offer, odds are
it's going to go in the union's favor.
It's going to go in the union's favor. So if you're confident that if you're in the union and you're confident that your deal makes sense and it's reasonable and the employer is out to lunch, I would say the odds are on your side. So time will tell, but this will get resolved, I think, fairly quickly, because again, there's not any negotiation. It's just the arbitrator reviewing what's going on, doing a comparative analysis, and then coming back and saying, here you go, this is my ruling, and that's your new agreement.